And please join me for the pledge as soon as Hannah gets it up on screen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty
and justice
for all. All right, thanks. All right, just a couple of housekeeping items. So we've turned off the question and answer in chat for this meeting. When public comment is open, please use the raise hand function on Zoom to be recognized and promoted to speak. And if at any time it looks like the meeting has been hacked, we'll immediately terminate and reschedule for a future date. So now, do we have are there any amendments or corrections to the December minutes?
Sorry to interrupt through the chair, but could we take roll?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Thank you.
I gotta put that in my, should put that in my thing here. Yeah, Councilmember Handren, would you take roll for us?
Sure. Councilmember Dawson.
Here.
Councilmember Doss. Councilmember Eagles.
Here.
Councilmember Newhouser. Councilmember Dickey.
Here.
Councilmember Nardo Morgan. Here. Councilmember Oldroyd. Here. And Councilmember Cooper.
Here.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to make a couple of comments before we go into public comment. One is that last time it got a little bit contentious, so I just want to acknowledge that these are big issues for us, and we've already been through an existential crisis with the fire, and this, for most of us, I think, in Glen Ellen and this area, feel like this is another existential crisis, although much slower moving. And I also wanted to just give a very quick update as to the outcome of the letter that we put together at our meeting on January 5th. We've gotten response and support from a number of other organizations and government bodies. So the letter has been endorsed by the Sonoma Land Trust, the Springs Municipal Advisory Council, Sonoma Mountain Preservation, the Valley of the Moon Alliance, and the City of Sonoma. That may be more of an informal endorsement. I'm not sure if they've actually sent a letter in. Also, the petition which went out to support the letter, which is accessible on eldridgeforall.org, now has 663 signatures on it. So we're hoping for as many as we can get by the time of the supervisors meeting on the 25th. Councilmember Dickey and I have met with Supervisors Gorin, Rabbit, and we will be meeting with Supervisor Corsi this Friday, I believe. As far as response from the letter itself, I did get a response from Senator McGuire's office, just acknowledging receipt of the letter and with the note that they were going to send it up the chain. So I've checked back in to see if there's anything else that they might need, particularly in reference to asking for more time or more funding for SDC. And I also got a response from Rebecca Hermosillo, who's the district representative at Congressman Thompson's office. And so she told me there's some possible funding sources, both in the infrastructure bill, which is already passed. There may be some money there for the wildlife corridor. And there's if it passes, the Build Back Better bill has money in it for the affordable housing. So that's good news. I'd like to encourage people to attend the meeting on the 25th, and also to write any comments to Permit Sonoma and your supervisor on the county website in response to the updated plan. And I just wanted to very briefly express my personal disappointment with the Permit Sonoma update, which they're unfortunately calling the fourth alternative. Feels like they're playing a little bit of doublespeak there, since that was the term that's been used here. And I just want to recognize that the RFP that they won, under which they're doing their work, calls for a specific plan to represent the community's vision, and we're putting that vision out, and the letter seems to have not only be the vision of Glen Ellen and Kenwood, but also the rest of Sonoma Valley by and large. And it also says the specific plan must be compatible in scale with the surrounding community, and that it's supposed to include meaningful and comprehensive community engagement throughout the process. And myself and virtually everybody that I speak to in this community feels like that has not happened, and that their updated plan does not fit the guiding principles. So that's just a quick update on the on our letter and developments at the county at Permit Sonoma. Okay, now let's move to public comments. Is there anyone?
Sorry
Excuse
again,
me.
through
Oh.
the chair. We still have the approval of the minutes.
Oh, sorry. How did I? I'm sorry. I'm a little off my game today. Are there any amendments or corrections to the December minutes?
Not
Okay.
really, Arthur, Chair Dawson, but I did see one thing on page 19 where I said, I'm not optimistic about writing a good letter. And I think I probably said I am optimistic, but maybe I'm wrong, but I'm not going to quibble over details because I know in a long meeting, there's a lot of transcription, but I just made me chuckle on that one.
Okay.
So,
I
that
think
was
you
on
wrote
page
an amazing letter.
19, mid-page 19. I wasn't I was worried about the letter, but I don't think I was not optimistic that we could write a good letter. But anyway, so that may be in transcript, but if it's not, I think I said I am optimistic about writing a good letter. But
Okay, well, I'm good with that
not,
change.
not that important, but it made me laugh when I saw it.
Okay, well, we'll include it since you noticed it and it sounds, it has value.
Yeah, that was page
Any other
19. Yeah.
Any other changes or corrections or amendments? Okay, so do I hear a motion to approve the minutes with the change on page 19 to stating that Councilmember Eagles was confident about writing a good letter?
Motion to approve.
And I have a second? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed, let us know with a thumbs down or a nay. Okay, so the minutes from December have been approved unanimously. And now we're going to move into public comments. At least as of this afternoon, we had received no written public comment on matters not appearing on the agenda. If anyone any members of the public would like to speak at this point on something not on the agenda, please raise your hand on Zoom and Hannah will promote you to the speaking position. We'll be allowing 2 minutes for each comment. And then when all the comments are completed, we'll have council member responses.
All right, so we do have a hand raised at this time. I'm going to go ahead and share the timer. All right, and first up we have Alice. Alice, you should now be able to unmute.
Welcome, Alice.
Hi, hello everyone. Thank you so much. I just wanted to mention, Arthur, you already spoke about the Board of Supervisors meeting on the 25th, and the SDC item is scheduled for 3 p.m. And I just wanted to let anybody listening know that if you are interested in preparing yourself in advance on the SDC item that will be heard during that meeting, you can go to eldridgeforall.org and go to the actions you can take page. And if you do that, you'll find lots of different things there. Like there's a link you can click on and it'll bring up a PDF that's the Permit Sonoma project description framework. And that's the document that's going to be presented to the Board of Supervisors in essence for guiding the redevelopment process. So you might want to read that one. That's an important one to read. There are other supporting documents. Another really good one to take a look at is attachment 5, project description exhibits. So on this actions you can take page on eldridgeforall.org, click on that and that'll take you that. You can also see talking points that will address all of these issues. There's a contact list, a very extensive contact list. If you want to write some letters, which we really encourage you to do and get those in by Friday the 21st, there's a link so you can register for the meeting and attend that meeting. And then there's a link for the North Sonoma Valley MAC petition. So actions you can take page on Eldridge for All. You're going to find all of that right there consolidated on one page. Good luck.
Thank you, Alice. And I encourage everybody who's concerned about this issue to check that out. Can
right.
I ask a quick question of Susan? Do you know if there's going to be 90 seconds or 2 minutes for public comments at that meeting?
It will be very short. I would be surprised if it's more than 90 seconds because there will be many of you wanting to comment. If you are sending a letter, signing the petition is fine. But if you are sending a letter or an email, bullet points, paragraph or two maximum. We already have over 200 to 300 emails and letters that have been included in the packet and are being forwarded to the board this week. And, you know, I have to say very seriously that there is so much mail and so much volume and so a lot of repetition in the comments that I'm not sure the supervisors will really be able to dive down and get much detail from the comments. So they're already probably developing their thoughts and going through the material, but brief.
Thank you.
Our next commenter, this is for Vicky. Vicky, you should now be able to unmute.
Welcome, Vicki.
Thank you. I'm Vicki Hill, and I'm a land use planner and CEQA specialist. I just want to follow up on the comments you made, Arthur and Alice. I encourage people to attend the meeting on the 25th and make comments. It's really important. In my mind and many others, the new SDC alternative reflected in the staff report to the board disregards the vast majority of community input. The problem continues to be the high level of development, 1,000 homes and 1,000 jobs, which is inconsistent with the site constraints, market and rural infrastructure. We all support housing, but not at this scale. Yes, there have been some changes made to improve the plan, but the numbers remain the same, and these numbers were overwhelmingly rejected by 99% of the Sonoma Valley, including your MAC, the City Council, public comments, surveys, and other organizations. As a member of the PAT, unfortunately, we were not given an opportunity to review the alternative, just like we were not given the chance to review the November alternatives report. I'm pretty sure that the PAT would not have supported these numbers. In fact, the developers on the PAT were adamant that the scope did not reflect real world market conditions, and they presented an alternative with lower numbers. So we are asking the county, for leadership and compassion to help us resolve this issue by substantially reducing the numbers and working with the community in a real collaborative process. Otherwise, I'm afraid we're going to enter into a long, contentious CEQA process that will have no winners, and it will only delay the much needed redevelopment. So I'm hoping the board will take that direction. Again, please attend the meeting on the 25th. I think it's important. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki.
All right, the next commenter is Jody. Jody, you should now be able to unmute.
Welcome, Jody.
Hi. This might be premature, but I am very interested in the component for housing, for affordable housing, looking at community land trusts for housing. And I don't want to lead a group because I have no expertise in that, but I'm very interested in researching it and finding out all about it. There's community land trusts all over the country now, and it's a great way to do truly affordable housing that would be a perfect match for part of SDC. So just if anybody else is interested in helping me research that, that would be great. I guess I can just give you my my email. It's just my name, JODYFALCONER @VOM.com. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Jody. And Jody's already done some great research into this, and I'm glad that you're here, Jody. Okay, anybody else?
Next commenter is Larry. Larry, you should now be able to unmute.
Welcome, Larry.
Hello. I wanted to thank you very, very much for the good work you're doing. And I just can't believe that we're moving against such a regressive backwash of misinformation. I don't know what to do about a government agency that seems out of control and doesn't respond to its citizens. I think we have an issue here that goes deeper than just the SDC, because other people in the county are complaining also. So I'd like us to somehow in the future, in the not the far future, but the near future, to consider on the agenda looking into what we can do as citizens to re-educate the planning department and perhaps maybe even other agencies to recognize and respect citizens, because as far as I'm concerned, there's been great abuse. And that report that just came out today that was dropped a couple of days ago on the files is misinforming, it's misguiding. I can't believe that they could be as deaf to what's been happening as they apparently are. And they're treating the Board of Supervisors as if it's a rubber stamp deal, telling them what they're going to do, meeting and talking with them for what, an hour on something that has been spending a lot of time. So something is way out of whack here. I don't know how we're going to fix it, but I think that it needs more attention than what we can give it, even at the level of the SDC. It seems to me that they're anti-citizen and anti-democratic and acting like authoritarian bureaucracies. So I think we have to look into that.
Thank you, Larry. We'll consider that for a future agenda.
And Chair Dawson, giving it one more second, but not seeing any further hands. Oh, one more. Next up, this is for Bonnie. Bonnie,
Welcome,
you should
Bonnie.
now be able to unmute.
Hi, folks. Thank you for council for your wonderful letter to the Board of Supervisors. Really thorough. I wanted to say that if you have noticed on the east side of the campus, all of the housing on that area is all planned to be new construction. And our plan is to adaptively reuse many of the residential buildings existing on the site for co-housing, for truly affordable housing in the 30 to 60% of area median income. It was not even considered in this new fourth alternative, which is really disappointing. We're going to resubmit a brief to the Board of Supervisors. We also, Tom Conlon of our group also presented a very comprehensive study on the amount of carbon emissions that are emitted when old buildings are demolished and new construction is put up. We're going to be resubmitting that again, and hopefully somebody in the planning department and Permit Sonoma will read that. It's massive. And where are you going to put all that stuff? These buildings are made of cement and tile roofs, which are perfect for the fire break along the east side of the campus. And we've studied the amount of people that can be housed per acre, which compares very well with anything that the affordable housing groups will be building there. So it's very feasible. It's good for the environment. It preserves the history of SDC. And when Permit Sonoma keeps pushing this idea that adaptive reuse is much more expensive than building new, they are totally wrong. And it's really frustrating. And if you folks can do anything to support the SDC campus project proposal, be very appreciated for the whole campus. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. And thanks, thanks for all your engagement over such a long time. And we'll keep working for people like you in the community.
Next up is Jim. Jim, you should now be able to unmute.
Okay, thank you, guys. I'm going to make this really short. Hopefully I won't use the whole 2 minutes. One, I want to really commend you guys for writing such a stellar letter. And I think it is reflective of the community. Thank you so much for all of your work. It is stellar. Secondly, I want to say is that we are in a democracy, and I think we need to let our elected officials know that we are organized and we vote, and that if they are not supportive, as has been reflected in how the Permit Sonoma has behaved towards the public, I think that our supervisors need to know that we are organized, we vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
And next is Mary. Mary, you should now be able to unmute.
Welcome, Mary.
Hi, this is Greg Garazzi on Mary's computer.
Oh, hey, Greg.
Hey,
Welcome,
hello,
Greg.
thank you for all that wonderful work you did on that letter and the petition, which I see has gathered over 600 signatures as of yesterday. I would just like to plead with Supervisor Gorin to step up and lead your constituents, 99% of who have rejected all of the alternatives in the new draft plan. And Supervisor Gorin, we've elected you to represent us in Sonoma Valley, and we're asking you to step up. I know that's going to require great courage and dedication and determination in dealing with the state to have them step up and take responsibility for the issues they've left there, the unmaintained facility, and they have to contribute to this, especially with their great budget surplus. So that's the main reasoning for my point is I'm asking Supervisor Gorin to be the lead for your constituents here. Listen to your constituents who've reached out and provided community input. It just seems really crazy to me that we want to drop 4,000 people in the middle of a wildlife corridor. And also with the sensitive high fire area and the evacuation issues that result of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg.
And Chair Dawson, I'm seeing no further hands.
Okay. Now we'll move on to the update from Supervisor Gorin. Or actually, I should say, are there any comments from the council before we move on related to those public comments? Okay, I guess I don't see any hands, so I guess we can move on. So Supervisor Gorin, please give us an update.
Well, thank you, Greg. I've been leading the conversation in the community and in the board, and certainly with Permit Sonoma for going on 9 years. I will not shirk my responsibility to reflect some of the comments that you've heard, but I will lavish you with praise. You've done exactly what you need to do as a MAC, which is find your voice and lend your voices to the topic at hand. I may disagree with you on some of your points, but I certainly agree with you. And I'll say this very clearly. On Tuesday, I disagree with the scale of the development being proposed, and I'll have a number of other specific comments moving forward. I think your comments might be helpful to not only reflect the comments that you provided, but really not focus on no, but what do you want to see, and specifically the scale that is appropriate for this beautiful location. And your comments could be specifically directed, because we're not approving an alternative. We're sort of giving direction and a flavor for what we'd like to see included in the preferred alternative, whatever that turns out to be, and the beginning of the conversation for EIR. And I know that Vicki will be leading that discussion very vociferously throughout the scoping session, and it may not be as long as what she would like to see, but we could start the conversation regarding scoping. What is it that we want to see in the alternative and should be evaluated? I think some of the comments may be a little bit more fearful than what I have regarding the impacts, but I think whatever is evaluated will point out some of the challenges with potential development and overdevelopment regarding the number of vehicle miles traveled, which is the new measurement that should be included in any EIR. How do you mitigate the vehicle miles traveled going and coming? My concept is you build employment and services and education on the site to house the folks that are in those industries. And I guess I have faith that that will happen, but it's still murky about what that would actually look like. And I wish we had a way to say to the planners and any potential developer, we want preference given to everyone in Sonoma Valley for that housing, not creating an attractive place for the Bay Area. We have a lot of houses being used as vacation rentals, and I'll just say no, an exclusion zone for vacation rentals pretty clearly. But we could have a lot of folks coming in saying, oh, I would love to have a second home. We have no ability to limit a second home. So I'm looking for mechanisms on how to be loud and how to really convince the state that they need to contribute to infrastructure upgrades, contribute to the construction of affordable housing on the site. I've talked with a number of affordable housing nonprofit developers, and they said, give me the land, I can finance anything. And so I'll have a lot of specific comments on Tuesday, but I hope that your comments, brief comments, can really focus and help us move into a direction of yes, and to give us some good bones on what should be included in the plan and on the campus, and what should be evaluated on the campus in the EIR moving forward. So I'm still, people call me a little crazy, because I'm still optimistic that we can actually do this. And I'm still optimistic that the board can deliver a strong message to Permit Sonoma and to the state about the scale of development that may be appropriate on the campus. So congratulations in meeting with some of the supervisors, and thank you for not telling me what they said. I've had a conversation with one supervisor, and that's all I'm allowed to have. So just a really brief update from that perspective. I have probably 4 notebooks. I burned up a whole file drawer of SDC stuff when I lost the house, but maybe 4 notebooks, fat notebooks, and now I've started another one with the material for the meeting on Tuesday. So I come well armed with information, and I'll be listening carefully to all of you. And again, taking the lead in the conversations with the board and having some very pointed comments going forward. So, and the only thing that I would update you on is please limit your gatherings. Thank you for having a virtual Zoom meeting. If you have an opportunity to look at the board meeting today, the transmission rate of COVID is through the roof. And everyone who's meeting, whether they're vaccinated or not, will be exposed and potentially transmitting COVID. Our employees are really struggling, both at the county and in our small businesses, but our students, the number of cases in the schools and the staff in the schools, just exponential growth of COVID. And it may be less serious than Delta, but it's still, our hospitals are at capacity, and we do not want you and your families having to quarantine and be worried about how you're going to get your food and let alone support your household. If you have a few dollars, donate to Food for All in Sonoma Valley. They are desperately short of money. And so I just sent them a check today, and their caseload of delivering boxes of food to COVID families is 4 times what it has been in previous history. So we will get through this together. We're getting to the peak in a week or two, but we don't want any of you to fall victim to COVID and then inadvertently transmit it to other folks. So that's my report. I'll see you all on Tuesday. Keep your comments very brief, very pointed.
All right, thank you, Susan, and thanks for that advice and a little insight into your thinking on this. We appreciate that.
And I would say the chair, James Gore, looked at me and he said, well, about an hour and a half for this this item. And I said, well, maybe twice that much for public comment. And and it is at the end of the meeting. So that's why I say brevity, because you will be cut off. They're going to be tired.
Yeah. Understood. Thanks. Okay, now our next up is presentation from John McCall of the Land Trust, Sonoma Land Trust, who was scheduled last month, but we ended up moving it up to January. And so I'd like to welcome him if he's already.
Sorry to interrupt. We didn't do any public comment or council member comment on
sorry.
Supervisor Goring.
Oh, brother. Okay, I got to get back into the swing here. Okay, any council member comments on for Susan? Okay, yeah, Councilmember Newhouser.
Thank you. Susan, I really appreciate your comments, and I think would definitely take to heart the need for brevity and for positive comments so that council, other supervisors can hear the what is possible and not necessarily just criticism of the process or the plan to date. You did mention mitigating impacts, and you spoke of vehicle miles traveled specifically. But what I'm hearing and what I feel like has been distilled down to the most critical issue is the number of houses, and the number of people that will then be occupying the site. And I've wondered if you feel comfortable speaking about this issue, because if you put another 3,000 to 4,000 people on the property that are actually living there, those will have non-mitigatable, if that's the correct term, impacts from just the sheer number of people occupying the site.
And Mark, I've already said that I disagree with the latest information from Permit Sonoma, and so I'll not talk more specifically than that, but I will have a strong recommendation about what we should be considering. And I think the number of units, potentially the number of jobs may be concerning, but right now it's illusionary about what employment might be on the site and the number of jobs being generated, although I have heard some interesting ideas being circulated. And but you're right. I think that analysis will be evaluated in the EIR, specifically the vehicle miles traveled. And I think that is going to be part of the real foundation for consideration of what's on the campus and what could be on the campus.
Yeah, and I was speaking also to the impacts on the environment and the quality of the wildlife corridor and such. And I think that that's part of what the issue that's been raised and where there's concerns. And it's very difficult for the community to be able to know exactly what that point of no return is.
And I've also said pretty clearly to Permit Sonoma that even though their latest iteration is better, I like the housing styles, and I like the fact that it doesn't lend itself to individual fences around each house. I think my comment will really state that I want to see increased permeability throughout the campus, especially in an east-west direction. I would like to say that we're going to have directional arrows for the animals to just direct them on two specific routes. And no, they're going to do what animals do, which is what they have done, is permeating through the campus. So I'll really talk about how we need to modify some of those blocks of housing to create more permeability.
Okay, but at this point in time, you're not comfortable saying what the number of houses are, the
No.
number of people?
I'm
No?
going to
Okay.
offer a range, and it will include your number as well as other numbers. So that's all I'll say.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, thank you. That's a reason for optimism there. Okay, let's see, any
And-
other comments
Kate-
for,
Kate has her hands raised.
yeah, Councilmember Eagles?
Yeah, thank you. Supervisor Gorin, answer this if you're able, but I know in the previous meeting, I think the month ago meeting, you mentioned being as specific as possible. We definitely worked on that as best we could with the letter, but you've mentioned it again. So we did have a specific number of houses in the letter. Some of the specifics were premature on. Can you be a little bit more specific as to what specifics you're looking for, if you can, if that makes sense as a question? Yeah.
You know, first of all, again, congratulations on the letter. You did offer very specific comments and points to be made, and your petition and your support among the community really supports the work that you put into it, all of you, and the very long appendix, which I haven't even gone through in detail yet. But so I think that is, and I think, and I will point out to the fellow board members that they should look at your letter in particular because of the detail in there and the amount of time that you put into it and the amount of support that you have generated in the community for your positions. So I think that we'll look very carefully at that, along with the Springs Mac letter and certainly the petition. But supervisors get petitions about all kinds of things, and we don't count letters for or against. But if other supervisors are like me, they'll look for the letters that are well formulated and that really come from knowledgeable folks. And I would include the North Sonoma Valley MAC as part of that. So, you know, I would like to see, how do you build in fire resistance on the campus? What are you recommending? Without paragraphs, just say fire resistant materials, architecture, vegetation throughout the campus, permeability for the wildlife corridor, wider riparian corridors, although they are sort of proposing that. But and be specific about how, and Susan would be great at this, how do you reflect the character and the charm of the site? What kind of design guidelines should be considered that we would want to put in the project description to really emphasize the architecture and the charm of some of the buildings, not necessarily the Russian architecture that is in the administration building. But also emphasize, and I'll mention, what buildings can immediately be usable for revenue, for education, nonprofit hubs, revenue generation, and be specific about what buildings could be used for X, Y, and Z. Hopefully that gives you some flavor of what might be helpful.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Supervisor. And any other comments from council members? Okay, any comments from the public?
And I'm seeing at least one hand raised, so let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, first up is Greg.
Welcome,
Greg, you
Greg.
should be able to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
welcome, Greg.
I'd like to address what Susan Korn was just saying about, you know, not wanting to hear what we don't want, but wanting specifics on what we do want. Well, I'd have to say that, I don't know, for the past couple of years, we've been sending information to the county to permit Sonoma about historic preservation. And you know, I'm real passionate about this. I've worked out at FCC for 45 years. And I know the history of you know, what, you know, the history between Glen Ellen and SDC and SDC and Petaluma and Kenwood. It's like, there's been just like hundreds of families that have worked out there. So when you talk about legacy of care, you're not talking about preserving a couple buildings, especially the buildings that they're suggesting, which is the Sonoma House and the PEC building. Those buildings are already protected. The PEC is on the National Registry. So I'm talking about the stories that go along with the legacy. That's why we need a museum and a library and a visitor center. That's how you're really going to hear about the legacy of this facility. Not just by having a couple old buildings that you're going to use for I don't know, as a whole. I heard the Sonoma House, they wanted to use it for hospitality, right? No way. No, you can't do that. It's an historic building. And I'd also like to say that we put out a proposal over a year ago about with the Landmarks Commission. Whatever happened to that? We're sitting on like 200 acres of historic district. So what's going on? I guess I'm done. Thanks.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks for being here. Thanks for all your work.
And next up is Larry. Larry, you should be able to unmute.
Welcome, Larry.
Supervisor Gordon, were you a part of the negotiation for the state legislature's legal arrangements for this contract?
No,
Do you know anybody who was?
probably our state legislators. And
Your state
maybe
legislators? Okay.
And maybe Director Wick, I'm not sure, and maybe our county council, but I was not part of that.
So it was county council and the permit Sonoma that arranged for the contract from the county.
It was the state negotiating the contract.
Yeah, but it was a negotiated contract between the state and, correct?
And our state legislators, I'm sure.
And state legislators and were the, at the time, there was a coalition together of the Land Trust and the Sonoma Ecology Center. Were they a part of those negotiations?
No,
So nobody from the local valley was a part of those negotiations
No,
unless
this
they
is-
were at the
this-
level of the
this
state
is
legislature.
a real estate and land use planning. This is not community planning. This is a negotiated contract with the county to lead a planning effort.
I beg your pardon, Supervisor, but the legislation that you passed, that they passed, said specific plan means comprehensive planning and zoning document. That's very specific in a comprehensive planning about being relevant. And there's
Larry,
three
I
things missing
answered
in
your
the comprehensive
question.
stuff.
I was not involved. Community groups
I know,
were not
but
involved.
well, we'll let it go for now, but I'm trying to figure out who created this contract and who it serves.
The Department of General Services at the state level.
And that concludes the time.
All right. Thank you, Larry.
Next up is Sharon. Sharon, you can unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Welcome, Sharon.
Hi, this is Sharon Church, and I wanted to thank Susan and the MAC members for all the time and attention going into this topic. I think it's very clear that the community is very passionate about it. And I'm encouraged to hear Susan say tonight that she thinks what's being proposed is too dense. And I certainly hope the other supervisors are going to see it the same way, because we're watching and we're not going away. We can't allow this travesty to happen. And in terms of what I would like to see there, I support the letter and the recommendations in that outstanding letter that the MAC provided. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate all you're doing.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you for being here and being engaged.
And I'm seeing no further hands, Chair Dawson.
All right. So now I think I'm free to continue on to the Land Trust presentation. So next up, we have John McCall from the Sonoma Land Trust. And He is going to speak about land trusts and housing trusts. And he was supposed to be here last month, but we had to push him off to January. So welcome, John, and we're looking forward to your talk.
Thank you, Arthur. Good evening, everyone. It looks like I'm able to share screen. So I had a couple slides, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Great. 1 second here. See that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So thanks for the chance to speak. I am going to try to run the slides and use some talking points as well. Today's talk is going to step back from what we're facing, of what the board will be considering on Tuesday and what we've been working on, even though it's been a thread throughout the conversations going back to the very beginning. But what I was asked to talk about is some of the governance and disposition options for SDC. And I am going to draw upon a report that the Land Trust Commission back in 2015 by a group called the Potrero Group, which was called the SDC Site Transformation Study. And if you remember back in 2015, the governor had just announced the closure of SDC. And ourselves, all of you, Susan, we were all at that time really just grappling with the reality that what we had known as SDC, that a state-run residential hospital for people with developmental disabilities, that was going to go away. And so this was commissioned at the very beginning of the closure process, which I guess in some ways may have been a more open-ended time in terms of what options we were looking at. And so Potrero, who's done terrific work with the National Park Service, with local government agencies, both in planning, in facilities planning, economic modeling. They work with nonprofits on organizational development. We commissioned them to look at properties from all over the country that had gone through a similar closure process for SDC. And they looked at 21 different properties. The report itself is available off of the Transform SDC website. I'm happy to get it into anyone's hands. It's very easy to find and to dig into. But I just wanted to quickly touch on these other sites that were where a deeper dive occurred, where they did a more extensive review of what had happened, what was the process for transformation. So I'm going to refer back to these sites in a minute, but just real quickly, the ones that really jumped out were the Anschutz Medical Campus in Colorado, the Richardson Center, which is in Buffalo, New York, and it was a state hospital for people with mental health issues. It was called the Hospital for the Insane, but it was a similarly poorly named, given SDC's original names, but nonetheless a similar facility, medical care facility. Lowry in the middle there, outside of also Colorado, Denver, I believe, was a military base. Hamilton Air Force Base, right up in Nevada and Marin. Fort Vancouver, which is in Vancouver. Presidio in San Francisco. The Water Campus down in Baton Rouge, and the Jamaica Bay Science Center in New York City. So all of these, we drew lessons from each of these sites to come up with, well, Potrero did, to come up with a set of recommendations. Early on, we really looked at 3 basic ways for the future ownership of SDC. One would be, and this is again based on both the kinds, normal and likely ways that these big facilities are transferred over into new ownership from both around the country, but also, here in California. So one scenario for SDC would have been a university acquisition. That's straightforward. One of the developmental centers down in Southern California in Riverside County was transferred into the CSU into the CSU system, as an example. Scenario 2 is a trust or wholly owned government corporation, which we're going to talk a lot more about. And then scenario 3, which is what we're facing right now with SDC, is essentially private redevelopment with hopefully a comprehensive plan that creates compatible uses on the site. That is what the state has proposed for SDC in the 2019 legislation. And it really seems to be the focus right now and sole focus of the Department of General Services. The findings from the Potrero Group report are so telling and important for us today, for the moment we find ourselves in, because some of these we have and some of these we don't. One of the key findings is that any successful transformation of a big institution has to engage the community and key stakeholders. Without significant state or national leadership, a lot of times the costs and political complexity of these kinds of transformations of sites does not succeed. There has to be a financial plan for self-sufficiency for the property. There has to be a vision that's compelling to attract both investors, financial resources, and talent. And then looking at alternative governance structures that go beyond what we might traditionally think of as either we're going to sell the property to a master developer or the government will just own it. All of these are kind of key ingredients for success, and go back to those examples I mentioned earlier. For SDC, the Potrero Group had 3 recommendations. One was to create a new trust, a new entity that would be a central body to execute the vision for the property. That doesn't just happen overnight. There needs to be an advisory body that is established upfront and early to help get the actual trust established. That would be a group of leaders in the community. And then there has to be that financial feasibility study done as well. So I'm going to stop sharing the slides because I want to just talk through some of this. 1 second here. So going back to the key findings, the planning process needs to engage the community. For the Richardson Olmsted complex, which was the Buffalo State Asylum for the Insane, that was built in the late 1800s. There's a lot of parallels here with SDC and the Olmsted complex in Buffalo. Big property. It sat vacant for 40 years. It closed in the 60s and as a historic site sat vacant. It is now through an innovative partnership with the city of Buffalo and the state of New York. There is a hotel, conference center, and historic preservation effort there that is being built and realized. The way that worked is that there was a community advisory council. And so every step of the way through the master planning, the state of New York set up a corporation, which is another, I want to make sure everybody understands this, a trust could also be a corporation. It is a governing body that can do whatever you set it up to be. So again, if you want to read the report in more detail, you can see how in Buffalo, they used citizen community advisory councils, hint, hint, to go through all the zoning and permitting and debate what level of development should occur out there. So that is a great example for how you engage the community. The Presidio is probably the best example of how the second main point, that you need high-level leadership, either state, in this case, corporate and national leadership. Nancy Pelosi immediately got involved. She had just actually been elected during the time that the Presidio was, that the Army said they were, going to close it as a base. But the Presidio Council was formed, which included the CEO of Gap, the director of the California Academy of Sciences, CEO of the Nature Conservancy, the chancellor of UC Berkeley. So pretty much all of the big hitters and important leaders of San Francisco and the Bay Area came together to form the Presidio Council, which ultimately led to the formation of the Presidio Trust through federal law. The financial self-sufficiency. So in the case of the Lowry community, which is in eastern Colorado, that was an Air Force base. It closed in 1993, almost 2,000 acres of land. That is now, in some ways, this is very important for SDC as a parallel. The focus was on residential housing and employment. So this area was, again, it was an Air Force base. City of Denver got very involved, and their financing around this is what made it all happen. Their financial feasibility strategy. And one of the things they did in particular was carefully stage the development to not oversaturate the housing market. They had a proposal for up to 4,500 homes, but they've been very careful in terms of planning when to build, how much to build. The alternate governance structure, which I think actually gets to maybe what you all might want to talk more about in relation to SDC. A great example of that is the water campus down in Baton Rouge. There, the community foundation created a real estate management entity, the Commercial Properties Realty Trust. And the trust and the community foundation in partnership basically move forward on a whole new way of planning and financing development. In this case, it's for coastal protection. They have a focus on having a science and research center that can inform resilience planning for the Gulf communities. So they have labs, research facilities, and commercial leasing, again, focused on coastal and climate protection. So there are great examples from all over the country to achieve these key objectives. I think I don't want to take too much time here. I just want to see if you have any questions or how I can help. And I'm not an expert on trusts. Just to be clear, the land trust, Sonoma Land Trust, we're a nonprofit, a 501c3. There's nothing special about our corporate structure, but we're also not set up to, in any way, shape or form, own and manage something as complex as SDC. So some of the models that are out there around community housing land trusts, like the Land Trust of Sonoma County, the Housing Land Trust of Sonoma County, there are other models that we can look to partner on who would own and manage affordable housing projects. Some of the groups like the Housing Land Trust of Sonoma County, they're not housing developers, but they are the ones that help design and enforce and implement affordable housing projects. I think you should invite Deb Getchus of the Housing Land Trust to come and speak to the MAC. I spoke with her. I think she'd be interested in doing that. So let's play out a scenario here. If the state of California puts up SDC for sale as surplus property, and there may or may not be a developer out there who is ready, willing, and able to take this on. Maybe there is, I have no idea. But I learned from one of the people who worked on the Presidio Trust, the Presidio Council, that it was there's been so much energy in the community around private philanthropy, and is there a way that private people can use their own investment dollars, their own talents and time to help create a trust for SDC? I think that's commendable and showing that private sector investment is important. But what really needs to happen is there has to be, by either the state or the county, some recognition that a trust needs to be established. a trust could be formed and bid on SDC. You could form a private corporation and name it a trust and put in a bid for SDC. That's certainly a possibility too. But looking at the Presidio, looking at other models, it was when the government blessed that trust formation that it actually worked. And then the hard work began of running it and raising money and, you know, coming up with a plan. But I guess that's kind of just a high level overview of what I've been able to learn about this model. I don't think we should give up on it. I think there's a long way to go here, as Supervisor Gordon alluded to. And I hope we keep kind of talking about this and educating ourselves and looking at potential partnerships that are out there. So I'll stop there, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, John. Appreciate that. And I didn't mention John's works in various parts of the county protecting land that we've all enjoyed. Many of us have enjoyed. So thank you, John, for all that work and all your long efforts on STC, which continue on as we see here in 2022. So now I'd like to open up to comments or questions from council members for John. So yeah, Damon.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Dawson. John, my name is Damon Dawson. I'm with the Housing Land Trust of Sonoma County.
I think I saw you at one of their fundraisers a few years ago. Absolutely.
And we had our meeting today. Our board met this morning and we discussed our possibility of partnering in some way, whatever would be helpful. And there's a great interest amongst the board. And so your recommendation to have Deb Getches, our executive director, make a presentation. We have over 100 homes right now in Sonoma County in the Housing Land Trust, and it's mainly workforce housing. But most of that is in the 101 corridor. And we very much would like to be part of Sonoma Valley. And so thank you for the comments. And I think it would be helpful as we look at the possibilities to understand exactly what a housing land trust does and can do, and has the capacity to work hand in glove with the developer to be very clear about the cost of housing, et cetera. It is complicated at first until you get a sense of what it means when the land trust owns the land and the homeowner owns the building on the land. But it's a very sustainable system, and we're having great success along the corridor: Healdsburg, Petaluma, Santa Rosa, Rohnert Park, Cotati, in this model. So it'd be good to have Dev come out and help the MAC understand exactly what it can and cannot do. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you, Councilmember Doss. And other questions or comments? Yes, Councilmember Oldroyd.
What's the document that you mentioned? How do I find it on the internet?
I'll put it in the chat if that's okay.
Yes, thank you.
Great.
And other questions or comments? Let's see. There's John just got to chat up. I was wondering if the community foundation has ever been approached about this, and or even before that, do you think they could play a key role in this what's happening at SDC?
I do, and I think the community foundation through the Sonoma Valley Fund and the Todd Trust, which was a fund set up through the community foundation, has already granted funding both to the land trust and our partner groups. It's been set aside for helping to protect the open space. So they made a $700,000 grant a few years ago. We're holding that money for the day when we can get the parkland opened up and transferred for public use. I think their role, as I was doing more research for tonight, seeing that this community foundation, for instance, in Baton Rouge, also in other areas, played a key role in bringing in private philanthropy and organizational structure. So I think reaching out to them is timely at this point. Yes.
And if I was to do that, do you recommend I talk to you first and figure out just the best way to approach them? And
Yeah, I mean, Susan may have some ideas. I don't know if you've talked to them lately. They have a new director, I understand too. But let's follow up, Arthur. I'm happy to do that.
okay, sounds good. And one other thought was, it wouldn't what do you think about the idea that maybe a land trust, or let's call it a community land trust at STC, was only, say, cover 20% of the site? It's just a portion of the site went to a community land trust and the other parts could be something else. Does that make any sense?
Well, there are other, I didn't use the Hamilton Air Force as an example because it's actually not necessarily the best or easiest story. But when Hamilton was announced for closure, when I look at my notes here, it was in 1985. In that, for if you've been out there, I'm not sure if any of you have been there.
I have been out there, actually.
I assume
yes.
you have. So the Federal General Services Administration sold it off. They did a public sale and parcels were sold to developers and other interested parties. So you ended up with different ownerships. There's the Air Force still, the Coast Guard still retains land out there. There's private housing development. So there are scenarios where portions of the campus could be from the state either sold or transferred to an entity, whether it was the Housing Land Trust of Sonoma County or a new body that was established. I think it's just a matter of that financial feasibility. You have to make the case that this entity could, depending on what their charge was, that they could make it pencil out.
Mm-hmm. So it wouldn't have to be all or nothing. It could be
No.
could be a real patchwork. Yeah. Well, that's all right. Thanks, John. Any other questions or comments from council members? Yeah, Councilmember Dickey.
I'm thinking off the top of my head here, John. So if I'm not as articulate about my thoughts as I'd like to be, just forgive me. We're pretty deep into this process at this point. Does that preclude us from pursuing the trust option? I mean, I know that the Board of Supervisors had a resolution back in April of 2019 that encouraged this possibility. Obviously, it was not pursued by them. As a community, while all of this is going on, in front of us, as a subtext, do we pursue setting up a trust that would enable us to, in the unlikely possibility that we could get the ground, do we pursue it anyway?
I think that the effort to get the state to support a trust concept, in other words, the state of California would establish the trust, that would become the governing body. It would have its own governing board that the state could appoint people to. The Board of Supervisors could appoint people. That model, which is the Presidio Trust model, basically, the idea that the state is going to facilitate that or make that happen is, unfortunately, I don't think that's very likely at all. They have said they want to sell this property, and that's the way that the statute's set up. That doesn't mean that a trust corporation that got set up couldn't be the entity that still comes in and is sold the property. So it may be a very different approach, but it could come from, in this case, the private sector. So I don't want to give up on it. I think we have to, there is a very real possibility that a plan gets approved for SDC, the state puts it up on the market for sale, and nobody bites. What do we do and I want to be prepared for that moment.
So setting up a private nonprofit such as the Sonoma Land Trust only is associated with, construction as opposed to land preservation would be the model that we would pursue. It's a private 501c3 corporation that would then enter into a purchase of the property. Is that sort of what we're talking about?
It could be nonprofit, it could be for profit. I mean,
okay.
there's all kind, as someone who's very experienced in this told me, basically said, what do you want it to do? And when you figure out what you want it to do, then you set up the corporate structure to do that.
Well, one of the advantages of the 501c3 is that it eliminates the profit motive. I mean, you know, we're talking about, I mean, the proposal from the county is 1,000 homes. If you take roughly 250 out of the affordable housing for the affordable housing percentage, right? 25% plus or minus, that leaves 750 market rate homes. At $700,000 a piece, that's $500 million. If you know, normally a developer is going to make 25 to 30% on their dollars. Let's say they make 20% in this case. That's $100 million that we're talking about in profit. So if you're eliminating the profit motive from this for $100 million, you could almost build 450 affordable units and be done with the density issue. I mean, I'm just running numbers off the top of my head here, but it just seems that the profit motive is a driver here, and it's driving the density, it's driving the affordable housing percentages. I mean, Susan could correct me if I'm mistaken about the percentages, but I don't think I'm mistaken about the profit motive. And so the model works from that standpoint, you know, just reducing the enormous amount of profit that's driving all of this would go a long way to preserving the site as something that's visionary, as opposed to, I don't know, W.C. Fields used to call it in search of the elusive pecuniary.
I've been hunting pecuniaries all my life, I'll tell you. Supervisor Gorin?
John, thank you so much for sharing the Potrero study. It's great to revisit that thought process that you and I put so much time into. And it was very provocative, and I loved reviewing the histories of the transformation of a number of institutions across the nation. And you're right, the thought of a trust, a nonprofit trust like the Presidio or any of the other trusts, is very provocative. And I want to echo and maybe support what you just said, that scenario. Matthew, you're really concerned about the profit motive, and there may be people out there just seeing dollar signs, but boy, knowing what I know about the history of Sinead and just the few buildings on the Sinead campus leads me to believe that anybody who sees big bucks in the transformation of this site and the demolition of so many buildings or rehabilitation of the buildings, I'm skeptic. I'm skeptical that this site is going to sell soon. And it may sit on the market for a while, and the state may have to think about creative ways of moving forward. So the idea of creating a land trust for maybe part of it, or transferring part of it to an institutional user that may be part of the state government, is intriguing. It may not be the sale of the entire campus. So, and it may be a group of folks coming together like the Housing Land Trust, Damon. So, and I know that affordable housing developers would love to just have, okay, just give me this little bit, I can create something there. So I think all things are possible. Let's dream big. I don't discount any of those, but I would say that the model of the Presidio, with the National Park Service as the landlord in creating and supporting the nonprofit trust for years, may not be the model that would play out here. I don't see the state saying, oh, gee, this will be so much fun. I could create a trust and be the landlord for this. So I think it will have to be far more creative with many community foundations, the land trust, all working together to figure out how you move this forward, knowing, and if we believe the state figures, $10 million in holding costs a year for security and maintenance. Maybe inflated, maybe not, but it should give many people pause.
Thank you, Susan. Any other comments from council members? All right, I'm going to open it up then to comments or questions from the public.
And Chair Dawson, we have a few hands raised. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, and first up is Larry. Larry, you should now be able to unmute.
Hey, Larry.
John?
Yep, I can hear you.
Is John still there?
Yeah.
Good.
I'm here. I'm here.
How much time and money did it take you guys to get going with the group? First off, let me just say congratulations on this great summary of this, because we haven't heard this information, and I'm just curious as to what it took to pull that together.
You know, we were moving fast. It was, the state had just announced closure, and we actually got the report done in about, it was about 3-4 months. It wasn't particularly expensive. It was more of a kind of review of using their expertise of these other models. So I want to say it was under 50,000. I don't remember the exact amount.
And I will say, John, that Tanya Carlone with the Potrero Group was instrumental in pulling this off, and Permit Sonoma has hired her to be the communications outreach face of the project moving forward. So it's great that we have her continuing presence and knowledge of this site.
Sure is.
Oh, it's good news. Larry, did you have more you wanted to say, or?
Oh, sorry about that. I thought that was the end of the comment, but I don't see his hand raised any longer. Next up is Tracy. Tracy, you should now be able to unmute.
Welcome, Tracy.
Hi, you guys all know that I'm a huge fan of the trust concept. The one thing that I heard as John was speaking was that there are a lot of different projects going on around the country, or that have happened a lot around the country, and they all involved an innovative process, right? Something that was specific to the site, something that was specific to the place. And I think it's really important that we not be inhibited by any of the constraints that are voiced about things like the Presidio Trust. When we look at SDC, we can do something innovative there. I guess my main question would be, and I don't know who could answer this, is that we're now in a specific planning process. And so that, I mean, if the EIR goes forward, then how is a trust plan B, or can it be part of, like, if we get more time, can it be part of another alternative? Because it really is another alternative, right? If we have a trust or a concept like that, we have another alternative. So I don't know who wants to answer that, but that's my comment and my question.
Thank you, Tracy. Thanks for all the work you're doing.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Just a quick response, Tracy. Hannah, do you need to do something there?
I was just going to say I see no further hands, so I can stop the screen.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
So one thing that CEQA requires is that you look at alternatives to the proposed project. So certainly the county could put forward the idea of a trust as a governance and ownership model. But I think without it being a real entity that was, ready and willing to get involved, I think that would be hard to do. I guess, Tracy, my thought still is that if the specific plan could be the guiding framework for what's going to happen out there, but that doesn't address governance or financing, you still have to figure out how you're going to pay for it. So if a trust were to come forward and say, here's how we will build affordable housing and protect open space and do all these other things, then it's, it's the marketplace of ideas. But I don't see it being part of the specific plan. That'd be great, but.
Thanks, John. Other public comments?
Their hands went up right as I was closing it, so I closed it prematurely. I apologize. All right, next up is Bonnie. Bonnie, you should now be able to unmute.
Hey, Bonnie.
Sorry, I didn't unmute.
That's good.
Have a question for Councilmember Doss. I was really encouraged to hear you say that the Housing Land Trust of Sonoma County is interested in helping with SDC. My question is are they just they just help with home ownership homes, or do they also purchase land for rental projects? That's my question. Thank you.
Primarily in the past, we have done for ownership, although we have done a few rentals recently because of changes in the demographics and the needs in Sonoma County. But primarily we do for home ownership.
Thank you, Councilmember Doss.
All right. And it is 1 comment per person per comment period. So next up is Jim.
Welcome, Jim.
You should now be able to unmute.
Yeah, thank you. Am I unmuted?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, very good. Thank you for the opportunity to speak again. And as many who know me here, Claire and I have been huge advocates of a trust as being the only real mechanism that can implement the various streams that we have for this site. And so the question is, I think there's 2 things that we need to consider here. One is time. I think if we were given another year, 2 years, in order to really consider this, I think that we could probably put together a trust, that would be prepared to purchase the land. So I guess I will again offer the idea that we do need more time, and I would really like to see Supervisor Gorin support more time to consider this issue. Secondly, I would like to become a part of a group of people to work actively in putting this idea together. I recognize that it's going to be a lot of work, but I can't help but think that there's a lot of resources here in Sonoma. A lot of resources that would be interested in this, and so to the degree that maybe the MAC can be a part of that, I'm certainly would like to become a volunteer in that, and would like to hear your thoughts, with regards to how we can make that happen. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jim. I'll just jump in and say Jody Falconer was on earlier. I don't know if you heard her, if she's still here. I believe is her, Hannah, is her contact info in the chat?
I believe she just said her email out loud. It's not.
I can't remember what it was other than, well, I'll tell you what, Jim, I'm pretty sure I have your address, but send me an email. And I just had an email exchange with Jody today, so I know for sure I've got her email, and I will put you guys in touch because she's interested in getting together with a group of people to think about all this and try to make it happen. So I think you guys would be a good team, or at least a good nucleus for a team.
And Chair Dawson, I see no further hands.
All right, well, this is moving scarily quickly here, but good stuff. I'm happy with all the information we're getting, all the comments. So now we're going to move on to a Brown Act Municipal Advisory Council's training. This is kind of re-upping us from whenever we had this training a little over a year ago. Oh, Councilmember Eagles.
Is John gone? John, are you gone? I think he might be.
I'm sorry, I just took him off the panel.
Oh, okay.
So I apologize.
No, I just wanted to thank him again before we close, because he answered some of the questions I had about sort of timing and where this fits in at this stage. I know there's still some questions there, but he helped us, I think, see it a little, for me anyway, see it a little bit more clearly as to where this could fit in at this stage. So thank you, John, if you're listening still.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Arthur, can I say something really quick?
Sure.
I just wanted the community to know, and our other MAC members, that our SDC ad hoc group has actually been looking into community trusts, and we contacted Common Space Community Land Trust. And so we're going to be talking to them about what they do and their plans, and it's possible that they might be able to come and do a presentation for us. So I just wanted people to know that we are really pursuing that.
Thank you, Councilmember Morgan. Yeah, I support having them come and speak to us, and yeah, to keep on exploring this idea, because I think has a lot of merit. All right, now let's move on to our Brown Act training with Linda Schultgen, who's from the County Counsel's Office. And thank you for being here, Linda. And
hi, everybody. Linda Schultgen with County Counsel's Office. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. I know that you all have had a Brown Act training before, so I am just going to go through pretty quickly our slides that we give to our other MACs, and then I'll have a time for questions at the end. But before I dive in, are there any specific questions that the MAC has that you really like me to focus on?
I can't think of anything real specific. No.
And I will give my standard training that I give to our MACs, and then we'll save question time for the end. All right, I will screen share now. All right. So the basic intent of the Brown Act is, it's common sense of what we all want to see from our government officials. It's transparency and allowing the public to have an opportunity to have public input. That the government officials are elected by the people and govern on behalf of the people, and the public needs to have an opportunity to evaluate and access and observe and monitor everything that we're doing. And sometimes the public doesn't generally come out when they just want to tell us how amazing we are and what a great job we're doing. Everybody is busy trying to take care of their families and maintain their jobs. And if they're going to take time out of their day to come talk to us, it's often because they have something that they want to say that they are upset about or would like to see change. So that's not always the easiest to be on the receiving end of that. But it is such an important piece of our democracy to be able to have people come and give us their thoughts and make suggestions. So I include this in my conversations with the MACs because I know sometimes it can be challenging, and I so appreciate that everybody takes time to devote their time to our community and to allow our public to give their feedback so that they can be relayed to our board members. The Brown Act, the main focus of the Brown Act is that it stayed the same since the Brown Act has started. This is the main heart of the Brown Act, that all meetings of a legislative body, of a local agency, shall be open and public, and all persons shall be permitted to attend any meeting. So while this main core has remained the same, the interpretations of what this means, what is a meeting, what is a legislative body, what is open and public, that has changed over the course of time. And that's why we give these trainings, because it's not always common sense about how broadly our courts have interpreted what is a meeting and what is a legislative body and what's open and public. And we just want to make sure that we're aware of how broadly these are interpreted so that we avoid pitfalls. So what is a legislative body? Let's start there. This is expansive. It is including commissions, committees, boards, or other body of a local agency, whether permanent or temporary, decision-making or advisory, created by charter, ordinance, resolution, or formal action of a legislative body. So the MAC itself has been created by the Board of Supervisors. The Board of Supervisors, obviously a legislative body, and the Board of Supervisors took action to create the MAC. So advisory, and it is a commission, so it is a legislative body. Now, when does the Brown Act apply? This is what we, in non-COVID times, this is what we would standardly think of as a a Brown Act body meeting together at one place at one time. But as I've already hinted, it's more than just this. So pop quiz. The Board of Supervisors appoints 9 local community members to the Climate Change Committee. The group is not paid. They don't have authority to take action. They're a group of local scientists, teachers, business professionals, and college students. They research, they meet with county staff, and they make recommendations to the board. Does the Brown Act apply? Here's a group of folks meeting together, doing great things. But if they're appointed by the board so the board, a legislative body has taken action to create this commission. So this would be triggering the Brown Act, even though it's advisory, even though they're not paid. So when they're meeting together like this, and there is a total of 9 of them, this is something that should be open and public. And when you think about why this is, because these are folks who are making recommendations to our board, to another legislative body, and there may be members of the public who have different perspectives, who want to weigh in and give their input, things that these folks might not have thought of. And so that is the purpose of the Brown Act, that if there's, even if it's advisory, getting together as a commission, there needs to be first a space that's available for members of the public to attend, and then notice of what is going to be discussed so that folks will know, do I want to take time out of my busy day to come and show up and make comments? So now we talked about what is a legislative body. So we'll talk about now what is a meeting. A meeting can mean, again, a group of people that we imagine in non-COVID times meeting at the same time and location to hear and discuss, deliberate, or take action on any item within their subject matter jurisdiction. That means that whatever it is in their bylaws tell them that is their responsibility to be considering, if they're meeting, discussing on those subject areas, then that is a meeting. And that's like what we see here, that they're meeting at the same time to talk about things. But it's, again, beyond that, it goes farther. It's also when a majority of members shall not use a series of communications of any kind, directly or through intermediaries, to discuss, deliberate, or take action. So, as Supervisor Gorin said earlier, there is for our Board of Supervisors, there are 5. So she's careful to make sure that there are only 2 that she can talk to. So if you look at the total of your commission, making sure that you are not having a series of communications that are with your commission members that are more than a majority of those commission members. So is this a meeting? For our Climate Change Committee example that we're using, again, there were a total of 9 of those members. So here we have 3. Does it matter that they're on the beach? It doesn't matter that they're on the beach. It matters how many they're talking to and what are they talking about. If these folks are all members of the Climate Change Committee and they are talking about vacation plans and they're talking about their families, if there's something that's totally outside the business of what their commission is doing, then this is fine. They can get together socially and still hang out. And I'm sure with Max, they're all living in the same community. They run into each other in the grocery store. That doesn't mean that there is a Brown Act violation because we all happen to be at the grocery store, or majority of us at one time. If we're talking about things that are outside of the scope of what our commission is, that's not going to be a Brown Act violation. But if we have here these folks talking about something that is within what they would be charged with considering and researching, and if we do have them FaceTiming with a few more other members, let's say we have 5 here talking, then this is going to be them talking at the same time, and this would be a meeting that should be open and public. is this a meeting? So let's expand this out a little bit here. All right, this is just a project team. So it's not clear who it's to. And so this can be challenging. If you are a member of a legislative body, it's actually helpful if you know, rather than just a group of who this is without knowing who's on this email chain, it's helpful for you to be aware if this is being sent out to a majority of the folks on your commission or all of your commission, to make sure that you're not responding back to everybody and that you're not starting to have communications with the other commission members. So it's helpful to, even though this is common in private practice, it's common when you're doing the work of within the government to know exactly who's on the receiving end of this, so you don't accidentally hit reply all and have inadvertent discussions with the whole group. And as I'm going through this training, it's also not uncommon to be thinking of your practices and maybe thinking of, oh, whoops, I did this wrong and I should have done it this other way. And that's the very purpose of why we have these trainings, so we can correct anything. And I don't know of anything. It's just common. I've given this training so many times to different departments as well. And there's often a evaluation of processes and seeing if there's anything that should be corrected going forward. I was just watching your meeting for the last half an hour or so, and it looked great. And Hannah, you were doing a great job following Brown Act requirements. So good job. Serial meetings. This is also an inadvertent way to be having meetings. This is where a majority of members of a legislative body shall not, outside of an open and public meeting, use a series of communications of any kind directly or through intermediaries to discuss, deliberate, or take action on any item of business. So this is where it can, again, if you're just reaching out to one MAC member, if you're reaching out to less than a majority of the MAC members, then that is something that is okay. But if you start having, here, just a second. Let me, okay, an email or a text chain is one common hiccup, where you have a MAC member A text MAC member B to chat about agenda item number 7. And then MAC member B emails the MAC members C and D about the same issue, then this is holding a serial meeting in violation of the Brown Act, because there is a series of members that are communicating about it. Or if there is MAC member A calls member B to discuss agenda item number 3, and then A is reaching out to others as well. So we call that a hub and spoke, where MAC member A needs some training about making sure that he or she isn't reaching out to more than a majority. So again, this could be fine if you have, if you only have 4 here and you have, some of our commissions have 40 people on them. I know your MAC is not that big. So really you need to make sure that you know how many are on the MAC and what is the majority, and that you're making sure you're not having inadvertent meetings. What's not a serial meeting? Individual contacts between board members and staff, council, or others. Staff meeting with a board member to answer questions, provide information. So this is common practice to help our board members prepare for a meeting and have any questions that they have. And then this is common to help answer questions and help prepare so that we can use the time most efficiently. But staff should not be asking, and the MAC members should not answer questions about concerns or positions of the other board members. Also not a meeting, attendance at the social or ceremonial events where no business of the MAC is discussed, and community forums and meetings of other government bodies. Also not a meeting, attendance at public conferences if the MAC members do not discuss among themselves the business of their jurisdiction. Social media, this is a update with new law. So MAC members should not be engaging in discussions such as commenting or liking another MAC member's Facebook page or Instagram site if it involves the business of the board. So again, if you are posting about your vacation or other things, it's fine to be posting and commenting on your other commissioners' pages. But if you're talking about SDC, for example, then you shouldn't be having a group discussion with the other members of your commission. And why? Why is that? A lot of folks don't have internet access. And so this is a new law that the legislature has made clear about how we can make sure that we're complying with the Brown Act in the age of social media. All right, so we've now discussed what is legislative body and what is a meeting. So once we have a legislative body and they're holding a meeting, they need to make sure that it's open and public. And so what does this mean? What does open and public mean? A big part of this is notice and posting of agendas. Again, if I am a member of the public and I'm sitting at home, I want to hang out with my kids and my family and my husband. And do I really want to spend my time to come and attend a public meeting? I need to be able to read that agenda and know that there's something on there. Oh, SDC is going to be talked about. That's something that folks are going to want to come and talk about, right? So making sure that your agenda has enough information so that members of the public can take a look and know if they actually will want to spend their valuable time coming in, talking to you and giving their thoughts, or just listening. And they need to be posted enough in advance, at least 72 hours in advance. Items that are not on the agenda, there shouldn't be discussion about items that are not on the posted agenda, other than every agenda should have a general public comment time where members of the public can come and speak. So when you have your agenda, each item on the agenda needs to have a public comment period for each of those items. And then there should be a separate time for general public comments for other things that folks want to come and talk to you about. And so if folks come and talk about something that they're interested in and it's not on the agenda, one thing that your commission can do is respond back and say, hey, we may want to put this on a future agenda so we can actually talk about this more in depth, or as staff, if we could consider whether this should be put on the agenda, consult with Supervisor Gorin to see if this is something that should put on a future agenda. But otherwise, we shouldn't start engaging in a discussion that isn't formally posted on the agenda. And this slide is basically saying the same thing that I just went over. So public comment, every agenda, again, needs to allow the public to comment on each agenda item in addition to a general public comment period. And timing, I noticed that you were timing your public comment. It's fine to do as long as we're giving the same amount of time to each of the speakers, which I saw Hannah doing as well. So great job, Hannah. We need to make sure that if someone's coming in and singing your praises and saying how amazing you are, you don't give them 5 minutes. And then if someone's coming and saying that they're really frustrated and want to see a whole lot of change, that they get 3 minutes. I don't think that you would be doing that, but I'm just making sure that everybody is treated the same, regardless of what they want to say. And of course, if we have non-English speakers, there is a law that makes sure that we can give them double time to make sure that they have opportunities to have a translator so that they can have the same amount of time, but accommodate for both languages. And then this is closed session, which wouldn't apply to the MAC. So I will skip over it, other than for your curiosity. There is a very narrow exception for closed sessions. And so this is a slide that covers it. And none of these areas that these would be allowed in are something that would be in the jurisdiction of the MAC. For violations, there are civil action violations. Any individual or the district attorney may file a civil lawsuit for injunctive relief or to void an action taken in violation of the Brown Act. Attorney's fees are available to prevailing plaintiffs if there's been action taken and there has to be avoiding of the action. And then there are criminal penalties if there is an action taken in violation of the Brown Act where the member knows that they attended the meeting and intended to deprive the public of information to which the commissioner knows or has reason to know that the public is entitled to. This is a misdemeanor. And again, much of the Brown Act, that's where we give training, is when I see problems that have happened, I don't see intentional. I haven't seen that. I've been with the county counsel's office for 20 years. I have seen unawareness of what is required and how to make sure that we are following the intent of the Brown Act, to make sure that we are following these procedures, to make sure that it's conducted in an open and public way. And again, I give this training to so many commissions and departments. So the more training that we have, the more we have opportunities to improve our processes. And then I added one slide for the Public Records Act. This could be hour-long boring training, but I just wanted to give you at least one slide because we get so many Public Records Act requests. And I just wanted you to be aware the general premise of a very broad scope of how broad the Public Records Act is, and to make sure that you're very careful for email messages, text messages, when it has to do with the commission, when you're writing about what you are doing as a commissioner, then this would be documents that are subject to a Public Records Act. So be cautious what you're stating and say it in a way, engaging civilly, and coordinate with Hannah and Supervisor Gorin's office to make sure that you are sending records to the county's email system if it's about official business, so that they can store. I don't know if you have minutes or you keep minutes about what your records are, but just making sure that it's stored through the county's email system and coordinating it through Hannah, and just being aware of how broad the public's right to know is, and making sure that you're aware of, even though things can be frustrating, trying our best to maintain civility and patience when we're writing and when we're speaking is something that is important for all of us to keep in mind as much as we can. So that sums up my presentation, and I welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Linda. Any questions from the council? Yeah, Councilmember Dickey.
Thank you, Linda. Just a quick question. It's a little bit off topic. I'm curious as to whether there are other MACs or CACs, like the Citizens Advisory Commissions in Sonoma County.
There are. So there are 2 in the 4th district, and there are 2 in the 5th district. And then in addition to yours, there's also the Springs MAC. And the board is considering a new MAC, I think in early February in Pengrove.
So those in the 4th district, they're MACs, is that correct?
They are created as, we've tried to have uniform bylaws for all of them. And so they are considered advisory councils in the 4th district, and in 2 in the 5th district as well.
Okay, so they're basically the equivalent of our group.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
They've been a really helpful way to connect with the community and let the community have voice in to important matters and help guide our board members in these specific regions. Because as you all know, Sonoma County is a very diverse area. And so having a focus in these certain geographic locations with your unique interests has been really helpful, I think, to give feedback to our board members.
And the contact people for those additional councils are available through contacting the 4th or 5th district supervisor?
I would reach out to Hannah. Hannah is, each of the MACs coordinate with the district staff, and I'm sure Hannah can help get you a contact, whoever you want to contact.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments from council members? I will say we've all been practicing our Brown Act care in the STC issue, because it's it's been very it's a big issue. So we've gotten some good practice lately.
And that's why I think it's helpful to come back for Brown Act when you first get it, when you first start. I'm just thinking, if it was me, I would go in one year and out the other if I didn't have a whole lot of experience with government. But you've been operating, I think, for a year now. And so it's, for me at least, when I get a training after I've had some experience in it, it helps me understand it a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. Other comments or questions?
I think Mark Newhouser has his hand up.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, Councilmember Newhouser.
Yes, thank you. Just wondering, there was one of your slides that mentioned information that can be shared if there, I believe, if there's no action to be taken, or discussion thereof. And I was wondering if you could elaborate on an example of, like, if would it be possible to share a document, say from one ad hoc committee to to the rest of the council, that would constitute, I guess, a quorum, as long as there was no further discussion or action taken on that document.
If I want to make sure I understand the question correctly. You have an ad hoc committee, and ad hoc committees are, which I think is spelled out in your bylaws, are less than a quorum of your whole commission, and they are have a sole focus, generally a single purpose, and they're for a limited time. So you have an ad hoc formed for your commission to do certain research on certain areas. And your question is whether that group can share information, send information to the full commission, or if that's something that has to be done in an open and public meeting. If there's information from the ad hoc that's shared to the full MAC, that should be something that is going to be agendized so that the public also will have an opportunity to have access to all of that information as well, and then put it on the agenda for a future discussion so that you can discuss it and the public can have an opportunity to weigh in.
Now, I noticed, if I may follow up to that, under some of the new rules to deal with social media, I believe there was one of those that said that you could post to social media as long as there's no action taken. Could a document that is, say, in progress or draft, could that be posted to the website for the MAC? Because we don't really have our social media set up, or maybe we do, I don't know. But if I think most of the documents that we're working on get posted onto the county website. If we were to do that, would that be considered public notice, and would that suffice?
So the question now is, if you have a draft document that's a document in process, but you want to share it with the public, can you post this on your website to let the public know what this ad hoc committee is working on? Is that the question? Am I getting that correctly?
Yeah. One way of meeting the Brown Act requirements and being able to share with others, including the MAC members.
Well, if you can post it on the county's website, but I also recommend that it be connected with and we're going to be discussing this, and coordinate with Hannah so that we can make sure that we're getting the board members' input and feedback. And we're going to be discussing this on X date. So if I am a member of the public and I'm opening up the county's website and I'm taking a look at this, then I know, okay, great, it's coming up. on X date, and I can go and talk to the commission so I can listen to what their thoughts are and let them know if I have any feedback.
Okay, well, it sounds like we can do it then, as long with that caveat.
The public should know when it's going to be coming on,
Mhm.
and I'd obviously coordinate with Hannah as well.
Well, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Which I think is what we have been following. We put something on the agenda and there's supporting materials, and those get posted. That's basically how it's worked so far. Yeah.
And we're in a slightly different time because of COVID, where we even have the opportunity to be meeting like this. So when we're not, just so you know, this is because of special public health orders and also a special legislation that has been passed, AB 361. So when we're not in that time, for us to all be meeting remotely, we actually would have a requirement in the Brown Act to post right outside of our door and allow the public to come and see in our own homes what is happening. So we're in quite an exception here because of COVID and public health orders that we're able to do this without posting agendas for each of our remote access. And who knows, long term, maybe that will change. But right now, this is all under AB 361 that we're able to hold these public meetings remotely. And so that's why we're able to do this.
We've never met in person, which is kind of sad, but hopefully one of these days,
Yeah, hadn't even thought of that.
And,
All right, other
any
questions?
other comments? And if there are any members from the public who for public comment as well for this.
Yeah, I'll open up to public comment as well, since we.
Sure, and Chair Dawson, I'm just giving folks a few minutes to raise their hand.
I think we have thousands of people who are watching.
All right, and
We have had some pretty big meetings. You wouldn't believe it. The triple MAC meeting was 350 people showed up for that one. All three councils in the valley. Maybe that's a record in the county. I don't know.
And seeing no hands, Chair Dawson.
All right, thank you, Hannah. Well, I think unless there's any final questions or comments, I think we're. I'd like to thank you for coming and giving us the Brown Act refresher, and I certainly appreciate the reasoning behind the Brown Act, and also appreciate some of the nuances that happen as we try to follow that in these complicated scenarios that we're in right now.
And I appreciate that you all, for all of our county commissions, give your time. It's important work that you do. So thank you for your work for our community.
Thank you, Linda.
You all take care.
All right,
Bye-bye.
you too.
Thank you.
Okay, I think now we're ready to move on to reports and announcements from council members. And at the top of my list is the CAC, the Sonoma Valley Citizens Advisory Council. So Councilmember Dickey, who also serves on that one.
Our last meeting, we had one item on it. It was to review a project in El Verano for an expansion of a multi-family dwelling project. Our meeting next week, we have a resolution on our agenda for the MAC letter. And it's unfortunate it's the day after the Board of Supervisors meeting, but we will go ahead with the agenda item for sure.
And I assume on the 25th, it would be okay to say that the Citizens Advisory Council is considering endorsing the MAC letter, but we'll decide the following day.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Is there anybody here from the Glen Ellen Forum speaking now to the members of the public? Okay. I'm assuming Hannah will see that. Okay. Any takers from the Glen Ellen Forum?
We have a hand, oh, we do have some, we have a hand up that has been up before you asked that question,
Oh.
and then a second hand up, so I'm not sure if you're able
Okay.
to see the names and pick out who I should be.
I'd have to look on another part of my screen, but let me see. I'll check this.
Debbie Lammers is on the board.
Sure.
I know.
And Jim Bartleman, is he involved in the forum?
I don't think so.
I haven't met these folks directly.
But Debbie's
okay.
on the board, Arthur.
We could
Yeah.
also do this one last and tied in with your public comment period. Get to everyone.
Well, since we're already here, let's have Debbie Lammers speak about what's going on at the forum.
All right, Debbie, you should now be able to unmute.
Thanks, Hannah. Thanks, Arthur. I'm not speaking on behalf of the whole board because our board meeting is next week, but I just wanted to give a notice to the North Sonoma Valley MAC that we are in the process of getting the necessary steps in order to proceed with our Dunbar Point project. And some of you are familiar with this. Some of you, it might be new to you, but it's a nice little project that the forum has taken on with the Sonoma Land Trust, and more details to follow, but just let you know down the road, we'll be running the information through the North Sonoma Valley MAC for your interest and whatever we may need down the road as the project starts off and continues. It's a small landscape fix project, if you will, the corner of Dunbar, Arnold, and Highway 12 on Sonoma Land Trust property.
Great. Thank you, Debbie. Thanks for all your work, and we will see what we can do to help you out.
Thanks, Arthur.
Okay, next on my list is the communications ad hoc, of which I'm on that one. Not a whole lot to report, but Councilmember Handren and I are working on a draft of our yearly report for the council, and hopefully we'll have that out pretty soon. Hannah, a question about that. Does that need to be, does the report have to actually be approved by the council, or do we just submit it? We've gotten ideas and some text from other ad hocs, so.
Yes, that will have to be on a MAC agenda. So if it's coming soon, I would assume that would be your February agenda, and then it's put on the Board of Supervisors agenda after you have approved it.
Okay, well, we'll probably shoot for next month if we can pull that off. Councilmember Handren, anything to add to the communications report?
No, just that we do have a Facebook page that I have not been doing a good job at keeping up. And if anybody is interested in having, I don't know, posting capacity, I guess, I'm happy to give people to share those privileges so other people can freely post information on the Facebook page.
I guess one thing I could add is that I have not yet tried reaching out to the Chronicle, but I think I'm going to like to send the Chronicle a copy of the MAC letter and just let them know, we had local media on our CC list, and just let them know what's going on up here. So that's also in my mind right now, Councilmember Dickey.
We now know that in the 4th and 5th district, there are 2 MACs in each of those districts. Probably worth it to send them a copy of our letter with a little bit of preface, I would think. And that's why I asked that question of Linda, actually. So we could probably get that information, the contact information from Hannah. And then I think it'd be worthwhile. Do you guys agree?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Okay.
And I can follow up with you, Chair Dawson or Councilmember Dickey on that as well.
Great. Thanks. Councilmember Morgan.
Arthur, I just wanted to suggest that you might consider contacting the Sacramento Bee, because that's a paper that a lot of legislators talk today. A lot of legislators look at, and it's a really good paper.
Great. Yeah. Good suggestion. I'm writing these down. And I also should mention that it was suggested that we contact Chief Aker from the Sonoma Valley Fire. So I asked Councilmember Newhouser to do that. And he did, and I got a message back from Fire Chief Aker that he's going to look it over and think about what comments he might make on the new plan. So I thought that was a good one. So another little bit of communications. I don't necessarily think of it all under that, but it's basically that's what's going on, is a lot of communications around the letter. Okay, let's see. How about the Preparedness Ad Hoc Committee?
Yes, thank you. Before I launch into that, I just want to mention one thing about that's somewhat indirectly related to the Glen Ellen Forum and the interest in doing work at the firehouse corner there, the project that one of the founding projects of the forum to enhance that little triangle across from the firehouse. The county had expressed an interest in putting a ballot drop box there, removing it from the firehouse and putting a drive-through drop box on that corner, which is problematic, but it was like the only location that they could find because there's no other public properties and the state wasn't willing to allow the drop box to be placed on SDC, and didn't think that the regional park would be a good place since it closes at night. So I reached out to a private landowner and the owner expressed interest in allowing a drop box to be placed there. And the county is now in negotiation and has submitted a contractual agreement, and the landowner's in the process of reviewing that document. Actually, it's in second draft form at this point. I'm not revealing where because I don't think it's appropriate to bring up the specific site until it's been, the negotiations have been completed, but it's very promising that we will have a, hopefully have a alternate location that doesn't require squeezing it onto that little tiny triangle there across from the firehouse. So anyway, that's it looks very promising, and I'll report back if that actually goes through, and then the forum can then move forward with doing that project, which is going to be a nice little enhancement and entry for Glen Ellen. As far as emergency preparation, also some good news. The Fire Safe Sonoma, who we have partnered with for funding, who we, to be the lead agency, if you will, since the MAC can't do that. We had asked if they could help us get funding for a community wildfire protection plan, which is one of the first steps to actually establishing a fire safe council or a firewise community. And our idea was to form one for Kenwood and one for Glen Ellen under, through our plan, through the preparedness ad hoc committee. And the Fire Safe Sonoma just notified us that they were able to get the funding and are having an introductory meeting with a few leads from the 4 different communities that will have a CWPP prepared for them. So this is just initiating, and Damon, if you haven't seen the email, I forward a request to include you in case we are able to do a separate CWPP for Kenwood. They may lump us together because of funding constraints, and we'll find out at the introductory meeting, but I wanted to make sure that you were invited, hopefully as if you're willing to be a representative for the Kenwood area in case we can get 2 separate CWPPs prepared for us. And that's all the news I have.
Mark, I have a question. I've got on my calendar. I'm not sure if I'm going to make it, but I got a notification through the county that of a draft CWPP. It sounded like for the whole county. That's the meeting's tomorrow night at 6. Is that what you're talking about? Sort of
correct.
part of that?
Well, yeah, they're drafting one for the whole county.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's probably going to be very broad, and I'm very curious because, a major incentive for having the CWPP is not only does it provide a potential funding stream for getting, funds for doing education outreach and other, like fuels reduction and, just like the $250,000 that the Mayacamas Fire Safe Council got. So, that's a major incentive for doing that, but it's also can provide rate reductions for insurance for participating homeowners. So there's a huge incentive for doing this. And I don't know if the county-wide CWPP will actually provide those incentives or benefits specifically for our area. I do know, though, that we're moving forward with doing individual plans, and whether or not it's going to be for the whole MAC area, the Kenwood, Glen Ellen area total, or whether or not it will be divided up and more specific. So I'm going to find out. I'm going to ask about the countywide one and what the implications are of that plan and how that relates to individual plans for specific fire safe or fire-wise communities.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for all your good work. And traffic and safety, any news? It's okay if I know people on that committee have also been busy with.
Don't really have any news, Angela or Jed. Do you have anything to share? I think we probably need to regroup, frankly, and see where we're going.
It's been a bit of a whirlwind lately, so
yep.
Yeah, no worries. And now the Eldridge STC ad hoc. Councilmember Dickey, do you want to speak on that one, or?
Sure. We've decided that we're going to have a fundraiser and buy the site. How's that sound?
There will be food trucks.
Yeah, that and pancake breakfast. I think we've been over SDCs in enough depth tonight. Would everybody agree?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Arthur, appreciate you're getting that letter out, because you've taken that on. So thank you.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, I just got to say how much I appreciate all the work that the ad hoc committee did and what a solid document that is. I mean, it's just, it's attracting endorsements from, a lot of local organizations, and people really support it. And like I mentioned, there's it's probably close to 700 signatures on the petition now. So that's, that's almost as many people as Diet and Bocce has surveyed, So
whose signature we really want on that petition? Gavin Newsom's.
Yeah, right. That would be.
Anybody know him?
I'll get started on that one.
Address?
I'm sure I can get that accomplished in the next 5 days. No problem.
That and the fundraiser details, right?
Right. Okay, well, let's move on. Well, this feels short, even though it's already been over 2 hours. But
And just a reminder to take public comment on.
Oh, yes, thank you. Any public comments on those updates, or any one of the public who just wants to make an announcement? This isn't really a time for discussion, but announcement about anything that the community should know about.
There is one hand raised, so let me go ahead and share my screen. This is for Jim.
Welcome, Jim.
You should now be able to unmute. And Jim, I don't see that you've unmuted.
Maybe he gave up.
The hand's been up for a while, so maybe that was just an errant hand. So,
well, Jim, yeah, if you do come back on, oh, he just took it down, I think, or took. Jim, are you there? like he unmuted, but maybe
His
not.
hand is down. I mean, no
Yeah.
hand up anymore. Yeah.
Okay, well, Jim, sorry if we missed your
And
comment, but I
Denise,
invite you to come back next month, or you can
And-
comment after you consider items for the next agenda.
and any comments can be sent to me via email if there is any trouble unmuting. All right, and I see no further hands.
All right, so ideas for next month's agenda?
Housing land
Councilmember
trust.
Morgan?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Matt. I just, if it works out with Common Space Community Land Trust, should we consider inviting them, Arthur?
Yeah, I would consider that for sure. And
Also the community, the housing land trust.
Yeah, and the housing land trust.
Yeah, that Damon's a member of.
Damon, how difficult would that be to set up, do you think?
I don't think it'll be difficult at all. Based on our board meeting this morning and our executive director, she will be available.
Okay, we'll get off an email to her in the next few days and invite her.
I'd also just recommend you just go to the website. There's a lot of information about how the Housing Land Trust of Sonoma County works, videos, stories, and just go to just Housing Land Trust Sonoma County.
Okay, thanks. And other thoughts or ideas? Yeah, Councilmember Handren?
So if I'm still interested in hearing a report from the Sonoma County Office of Equity.
Oh, yes, yeah.
They have a report coming out, I think in a couple weeks, and hearing about that report that they've put together, and also how we can better reach all the people in our community would be great to hear.
Thank you. Yeah, good reminder. Yeah, I would support that. Yeah, Councilmember Dickey?
The CAC is going to receive a presentation on EIRs from Greg Carr. And I'm wondering if the MAC would be interested also. It's not as pertinent because the CAC actually will receive the EIR when it's finished and presented. But maybe just for informational purposes, it would be beneficial to know what's involved in one.
So do you recommend we put that on our agenda, or that we just encourage people to go to that presentation?
I'm just presenting it to the MAC to see if there's enough interest in having that sort of presentation made. It obviously relates to SDC.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it sort of ties into the letter and everything else that's happening. Yeah, it would be informational just like anything else would be. So I'm just proposing it.
Could we join your
meeting? Yeah, Councilmember Das?
Could we join your meeting as a public member and just listen?
Yes, absolutely, for sure.
That's what I would rather do.
Okay, so you know what I'll do when I know when that's going to happen, I'll make sure that the MAC knows of it. And that would preclude the necessity for having it in our own, in our own MAC meeting, unless you wanted it so that you could ask more specific questions that wouldn't be covered.
Oh.
I think let's talk about it just for a minute, because the EIR is a really important part of this process, and I realize that we're not as closely connected as the CAC, but and I'm curious when there's the scoping session that happens, right, around the EIR at the beginning. Is that?
Yes, but there is, but we don't receive any of that. The CAC does not participate in it. What they'll do is they're going to come up with a final EIR report. They'll present it to the CAC for, it's a resolution. So I don't know what that means. Is it a resolution that we accept it or we've listened to it? I don't really know the answer if that were a question. But I did think it was important for us, since we're going to hear it, and there is a resolution associated with it, to be informed as to what an EIR is, what the consequences are, how you evaluate it, all that sort of thing. It's tied to CEQA. So it can be pretty complicated, and you're going to hear that acronym a lot.
Yeah,
like
so this
to-
is definitely not next week, right? It would be a date to be determined.
No.
Excuse me, Arthur.
Yeah, yes, it's we're going to have the presentation when we know in advance when the EIR is going to be presented to us. It was originally scheduled to be in April. I don't think that's going to happen now. That is, I mean, the latest that I've been informed is that it hasn't been scheduled for presentation. I mean, that's pretty aggressive. They have not even, I don't think they've started on it yet. So, gosh, I mean, they need some period of time in which to prepare it.
So Matt, let me know if I have this right. This is my impression from what I've heard other places, is that before the EIR really gets underway, there's a scoping period or a scoping session where the public can say what we want studied. Like we can say we'd like the ER to look at the the permeability of the campus for a wildlife corridor. We wanted to look at whatever noise pollution that might have. Is that right? Is there?
Yes, I think there's that, and then I think afterwards there's another one. So and the reason that is really important is because if you file a lawsuit related to an EIR, the lawsuit can only address things that were brought up in these scoping sessions, in these sessions that are open to the public. And whether Permit Sonoma addresses them properly or not is not as important as the fact that if you have a question or an issue, it has to be brought up in those public forums.
So I guess my question for the other council members is that seems like an important part of the process, that the public know about the scoping for the EIR. And do we
True.
So do we think should we be helping get that information out to the public by making it part of a MAC meeting? I'd just like to hear what other people think, and then we can vote on that as an agenda item if we want.
It's a pretty good idea, Arthur, actually. I mean, just from a transparency standpoint, and the more that the public participates, obviously the better,
I mean, here's Councilmember Oldroyd.
My feeling is that it is very complicated and these things take months and months and months to put together. And I believe we should attend the other meeting for general information, and at a future date have a specific targeted presentation.
Okay, thank you. And other comments or thoughts?
That sounds like a good idea to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Councilmember Morgan.
I was just going to agree with Susan. I think it's really technical information. I think there's a lot of it. It's hard to absorb, and it would be great. I think we should, as members, maybe choose a committee that will go, or at least some of us should go and listen to that, to Greg Carr. He's been a planner for many years, and he really knows the ins and outs of all of this. And then maybe we can consolidate it and bring it back. Someone could just condense it and give a report to the community at our MAC meeting. Or as Susan suggests, we could target a specific part of it.
Can I ask a question of Susan? Susan, did I have that correct? Was my information correct about these scoping sessions and litigation? Is that accurate?
I'd have to check. It sounded good, but I'm not an expert on that part.
Okay.
Sounded good.
I'm sure John McCall would know about that probably.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me think. So we want to. I think personally, I agree with. We could encourage people to go to Greg Carr's presentation for the CAC. And Matt, will you just take on I'm sure you would anyway, but just let the public know at the MAC meeting if what's going on with the scoping and how they can participate. And then when the EIR actually comes out, then we'll think about scheduling a presentation on the EIR.
That sounds good.
Okay.
So can I clarify timing, guys? So the scoping is before any work begins, right? And the actual EIR is once they get underway. I'm just trying to understand, is this general info or is this more specific info to the SDC site?
Scoping is a very specific term for an EIR preparation.
Prep, okay, yeah.
Yes, so it's a very formal session that they're required, I think, by law to have, so that the public has an opportunity to bring up stuff that they find that needs to be addressed in the EIR. Okay. And then they'll do that, and then I think, and I can be very mistaken about this, but then once that's done, they do another session to make sure that those things that were brought up in that initial scoping are followed through with, and because it gives the county, in this case, the opportunity to address those things. So and to Susan's point earlier, it's a long, complex thing, right? So originally it was going to be heard in April. I don't think it'll probably be heard until at the very earliest June or July, I would imagine. And that would be the shortest EIR for a project of this scale you could probably ever hear of. I mean, some of these things take years to prepare. So I will keep everybody apprised. I'm just presenting the idea that it's sort of the next step, There's the political step, which all of us will probably be interested in pursuing, but there's also the formal step of, once a planning document and a specific plan is adopted and this and that, then they start working on this EIR.
Right.
And
Thank you,
it
Matt.
stands for Environmental Impact Report.
Right. And CEQA is the California Environmental Quality Act. Yeah, that's trying to stop myself from speaking in acronyms sometimes, but it's easy to fall into it for sure. So can I just see a show of hands then? So Matt's going to keep us apprised of what's going on, and then down the road we will have an EIR focused presentation. Is that basically what we want? So if you agree with that plan. Okay, so thank you, Matt, for just keeping us informed. And any other items for a future agenda, whether it's next month or at any point in time? All right, well, I believe we are actually, it's only 7:59. I don't know what I'm gonna do the rest of my evening.
And through the chair, just a reminder, open public comment one
Oh,
more time.
Yeah, go ahead. I keep forgetting. I'm sorry about that.
All right.
Any members of the public that would like to comment on items for a future agenda?
And we do have one hand raised. I'll go ahead and
All
share
right,
the
looks like
timer.
Larry. Welcome, Larry.
And just one moment, Larry, you should now be able to unmute.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to go back to where I was earlier, that we need to do better education for ourselves. It's sad that the county experts are not in the role of teaching us and educating us and being transparent about what they're doing. And it seems that there's two frameworks that are not communicating with each other, the framework that the people have and the framework that the planners have. And I think we need to engage with Permit Sonoma in a more intensive, direct way, some kind of conversation and mutual education. We need to understand their frame of reference better, and they need to understand our frame of reference better, because right now we're about to spend all kinds of time and money in court fighting over things that might be able to be resolved if we got to know each other in a way that would allow us to talk about each other's frames of reference and get rid of some of the distrust and some of the dislike that's in the community and in the county. I do not understand at all why Permit Sonoma essentially eviscerated most of the community comments and went on its own and sort of snubbed its nose and said, we're just going to shove this thing down your throat. But if that's their attitude, then it's not going to help anything about the EIR, because they're going to shove that one down the same way. So we've got to engage those people and get them into a collaborative structure with us and go back to a democratic participation in planning, which is required by state law and is supposed to be done in professional planning. So, I'm asking you to put a discussion of citizen participation in planning with Permit Sonoma as part of the discussion of somewhere. I can't do it all in 2 minutes.
All right, thanks, Larry. Citizen participation in planning, that's a good, and I got to say, those are some spot on comments. So that I think reflect the feelings of a lot of us in this area. Okay, any other public comments?
Giving it just one more second, but not seeing. Oh, we've got one more hand. This is for Deborah. Deborah, you should now be able to unmute.
Welcome, Deborah.
Hi there, Deborah Nitasaka here, longtime affordable housing advocate, co-founder of Vineyard Workers Services. I would like there to be some consideration as we go forward with thinking about who will be housed on this property eventually. About farm workers, I've heard no discussion of their need for housing, some of it permanent, some of it seasonal. Also, I want to repeat, like like a never-ending song, the need to consider some sort of educational use for that campus. Again, I point you to Berea College. It's an outstanding model where kids graduate with degrees in everything from teaching to the crafts, and they leave that 4-year experience with no student debt because they work on campus. And that would provide some of the labor needed to maintain this acreage. So I would implore you to take a look at their website. That's just one example, but I really feel it's imperative that we think about how we can use that property to better prepare the young people in Sonoma County and throughout the state of California for better paying jobs than the kind of work they typically find in this county. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deborah. I like that idea. Maybe there's a way we could combine inviting one or two of the land trusts, as well as maybe a representative of the Latinx community like La Luz or some other organization to really hear about housing needs and job needs in that community that might be served at SCC. That might be a really good combination. Anyway, okay, any other hands up?
Seeing no further hands.
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Mark has his hand up, Arthur.
Okay, all right. Is that a motion, Mark?
No, actually, I was going to respond to what Larry said, if that's okay.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah, missed that.
Yeah, no, I think Larry makes a really good point. I think he did do it in less than 2 minutes. So, I was thinking here we had a Brown Act presentation, but it might have been even more appropriate to have had Brian O from the PRMD present, or at least have a discussion with us, because unfortunately, it's become this us and them. With the community and PRMD being divided. And unfortunately, the only time that we do interact is when it's during a workshop or a presentation and not really a dialogue. And I think that's unfortunate because if anything, we know that if we don't work well together as a community with our representatives or with the county, the state will just do an end run around us. And so it's kind of a divide and conquer. And anyway, I think he makes a great point, and I think that we should invite the county to join us in a dialogue about what's going on with STC, because maybe we can learn really what they're thinking, and try to find that middle ground that we can partner and be successful in this endeavor. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mark. I wrote that down. I like that. It's a good idea. Yeah, I agree. We need to work together and try to bridge these divides that have happened. All right, any other comments or ideas for future agendas? Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved?
All right, and do I have a second to adjourn the meeting? And
Seconded.
All in favor of adjourning the meeting, raise your hand.
Hi.
All right, anybody
Aye.
opposed? All right, we did it. 8:06, not bad. It's not 11:30.
Thank you, Hannah, for keeping
Yeah.
us on track.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hannah.
And
And
Alondra, and
Thank you,
Alondra, for
Arthur.
taking those minutes.
And Arthur, yes. I didn't
And
mean to
Arthur.
forget you, Arthur.
Arthur,
Don't
you
worry about
too.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
Night.
All right. Well, everybody
Good
have
night,
a
everyone.
good, we'll see you next month. And
Be safe.
yeah.
Be safe.
Good night, everybody.
And may see you at the meeting on 25th. All right.
Yeah.
Care.
Wear your mask.